And with that, we're going to quickly go into our next presenter. I'd like you to help me welcome Katie and the team from California Lottery.
Hello. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to start my video.
I'm going to stop sharing so you can.
Okay, perfect. Let me do. Okay. Share. We'll see if we got it right.
I see it.
Behind the scenes stuff, then we're good. Nobody needs to see how my brain works. Okay. So who am I? I am Katie or Catherine Ibarra. I go by either. Either one offends me. My mom wanted me to be a famous judge, but here I am. I am the talent acquisition specialist for the California State Lottery. What that basically means and how I define kind of what I do is I'm more of like the cruise director, more so than the actual captain of the ship. I'm just more to direct activities and let people know and give you more information than you're probably ever going to want to know. Just because I always find I don't know what's going to be useful to you. So I just kind of give you it all and then overwhelm you. And then if you have questions, obviously, please don't hesitate to ask. My ultimate goal of anything I do is to definitely make sure to take kind of some of the guesswork out of the application process, which I find to be the biggest struggle point, which is unfortunate. But if I can take some of that out, then I've done my job, obviously, to make you successful. Once you get in the rhythm, it's rinse, wash, repeat, but it's just finding how to make that work for you is obviously the most complicated part. So I made a cute little roadmap for us. So kind of how it works. Some of what you talked about today was the examination process. And then your eligibility, which is the minimum qualifications portion of it. And then going on to check for vacancies, meaning going on to Cal Careers and checking everything out. Then, of course, the application portion, which that I will go into in a lot of detail as well. Um, getting your interview, and then any job related clearances. So this could be something where they do background checks, you sign your paperwork, all that stuff. And then of course the best part is when you actually start your job. I'm going to be going over for the application stuff, and then also just what to include, what not to include, all of the extra information that can be in there. So a little bit about who we are, what we do. I'm not going to read that to you because that'd be a lot of stuff to go over. Basically, all of the money spent on lottery tickets goes back into the public school system. And I was always under the impression that it was K through 8th. It's not. It actually goes all the way up into actual college too as well. There's a lot of colleges that reach out to get money for things that they need for their classrooms, and that's what that funding goes to, which I thought was kind of neat because, like I said, I didn't know that before I started. I also didn't know that we actually have jobs either. I don't know where I thought things came from, but that's something. So there's a way to go through and actually see kind of where the money goes to per county, which is kind of a neat thing because, like I said, I didn't know that the money actually went back into the communities that we live in. We do have plethora of locations all throughout the state of California, ranging from, actually it goes up higher if there's sales rep. So anywhere you see there's lottery tickets, we have a sales rep that services that area. So all the way from the top of California down to the bottom as far as sales goes, and then everything in between. And this is kind of the same for every agency that you're going to come across. Every agency has a mission. So it's the who do we serve, what do we do? That's the main part. For us, it's our sales and marketing. That makes up half of who we are. So this goes down into, as you can see, the engagement marketing, consumer marketing, video production, any commercials that you see, product design, the lottery tickets, and also the billboards and everything you see. The website and apps are designed in-house, player loyalty. And we do have a sales team. So these are people who go out and stock things exactly like you see in the store. And we also have warehouse workers. So these are the people that actually get the products out onto the shelves. Operations, so we have fleet vehicles, we have engineering and maintenance for our facilities, we have a custodial service. We have people who deal with contracts and facility management. So majority of state organizations have the support system in place. So this is kind of outside our sales and marketing. What you're going to see here is very similar to what you can actually expect to see from all other agencies, which is kind of cool because you're not boxed into one choice when it comes down to who to work for. You have a plethora of choices just depending on your experience. We have our executive staff. So these would be people like our Office of Equal Opportunity, Legal Services. I want to say majority of agencies have lawyers or legal support staff, obviously, because when you're dealing with the government, you have a lot of hairy situations that can come up. We have information security. This is more so our cybersecurity folks. Audits, we get audited all the time. Anytime you're dealing with money, you're going to get audited. And obviously legislation, making sure that people are paying attention to what's going on within the legislation and also acting accordingly. Our law enforcement division, we have uniform and non-uniform. So we have actual sworn law enforcement officers that are peace officers that do investigations. Once again, going back to the fact that anytime you're dealing with money, people get weird, things happen. So we have people that go in and investigate. So anytime you see like a big ticket win, the law enforcement officers are the one to go through and validate, make sure that the ticket was actually purchased by that person, and to make sure it's legitimate, obviously, before any monies are actually put forth. We have a theft unit and we have an investigation claim staff as well. So this is just a kind of small part, but there's an administrative. So there are people like me that can go in there and actually work within that realm as well. Our IT people, we have a two-prong kind of approach. So we have the people that support people like me, who have nothing, who have just computers and don't know how to work anything and things break. Those are that part. And then we have people that actually work within the gambling system. So it's kind of a neat place to find yourself. And then our finance division. So these are your accounting, finance, fiscal management, taxes, people who actually hand out the prize payments. We have those within each district office. So the neat part about the people who do the prize payments. So if you have 2 years of retail experience, you're eligible for that job, which is a neat way to take your retail experience and turn it into a career. And then, of course, where I sit, I like to call myself the necessary evil, which is human resources, that you have your payroll exams, health, for FMLA, that type of stuff, compliance, make sure that all the paperwork's actually as it should be, labor relations, because we are a union, we do have union representation. And then also performance management, if there are issues with performance management, basically allowing people to get back on track. So it's just a little bit about who we are and kind of what we do. So if we were to talk about merit-based hiring, and I'm not sure if that was covered before, but I think it's important to go over it. So every single person in the state is required to submit their own application. This is the reason why we can't take, your application and refer it onto our manager or resumes. It's because it's a merit-based hiring system. And so what that does is that basically takes us out of the equation. It makes it more fair and consistent instead of, I know so-and-so's boss, happens to be my neighbor. What it does is it evens the playing field for everybody to be able to allow the same opportunity to get the same job, obviously if they're qualified. The scoring criteria, what that means is before anything ever hits CalCareers, before you ever even see it, the manager has to have their interview questions set. They have to have kind of their ideal candidate. The way I like to think about this is if back before I was married and I would just write down my dream boyfriend and what he would look like and how he would act. And I would have these wonderful steps that, these qualities about him and everything, perfect. That would be kind of like our scoring, if you will. What that means is they have what an ideal candidate would look like and then assign points to that. So if you if they're looking for somebody with clerical experience, and let's say they want, the minimum is 2 years, and if you have 4 years, that gives you more points than obviously somebody who has 2 years. So what that does is it allows for more experience or more skill sets to get more points. And I'm going to go over how to kind of develop that within your state application as well. It's important to remember that. So what it does, once again, is creates a fair and consistent hiring process for everybody involved. It allows for everyone to have an equal shot at a job, so that way you can adjust your scoring if you get Bob's resume and you really like Bob. Bob has to sell himself in the same application that I had to sell myself. So it creates a very level playing field. So what does that mean? So if I go into one group and I'm the top dog, I'm number one in this group, but then, my neighbor next to me applies, and you know what? They're even better than me. I go now down to second. So it's literally whoever applies and whoever the best candidates are the ones who get interviews. You might see that dreaded thing where this is a re-advertisement. No need to reapply. It doesn't mean that you weren't selected. You might have been the top one and the only one for that applicant bunch, but they need to have something to be able to interview more than one person, to make sure, once again, fair and consistent. We can get audited at any point by the state personnel board. Anytime there's a hiring, if something is brought up, they can go in and they can audit it. And if it's not done correctly, the hiring process becomes extremely it get ugly very quickly. So that's something to also keep in mind, is that these are all not public, but they can be looked at and reviewed to make sure that the hire was correct and make sure that everything was done exactly how it should have been and outlined by the rules. We do a merit-based hiring. So this is based on knowledge, skills, and ability. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail as we get through this. I'm sure you saw before, so how we do let's see, this thing popped up too early. So I like to say it's in 4 easy steps. You set up your account on CalCareers, which will become your new best friend. You're going to review your minimum qualifications. You're going to take the assessment or exam, and then lastly, apply for the open position. I think the gentleman before went over this in probably some detail, but I am lazy, so I'm going to give you kind of some of the benefits I see into some of the direction I'm sure you did, but mine comes from sheer laziness. So I like to do things a certain way, so that way I don't have to do it later. So obviously you always log in from your CalCareers account. You can do pretty much anything. So you can check on your application status. So you can find out the status of the application that you submitted online, which is always great because sometimes you forget. You're like, did I apply for this? Did I not? You can also check to see what exams you've taken, kind of what's active on the books. You can also set up notifications, so you can kind of see, if a particular job comes up. If you want to be we'll say a social worker, you can set an alert for that, so that way you get it. You can also create application templates, which is huge. Like I said, I go back to the fact that I'm extremely lazy. So this one's really great for me, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. And obviously upload documents. That one's huge because I lose things constantly. So having a place where I know that they're housed and I don't have to look for it again is really, really wonderful. So application templates. You can get to your application templates, and this is actually my CalCareers account. So I'm not lying when I tell people this. I save multiple ones. And once again, I go back to the fact that I'm lazy. So you can see here that I have different versions that I've saved. So that way I can see which ones I want to use, whether that be more generic or more specific. So you can see on the bottom, it says recruitment AGPA application. Yes, I am really that lazy. So I know this one highlights more of my recruitment experience. Training officer, I was a trainer in my previous position at the state, and so that one goes in there. I have like the workforce specialist, that is highlighting more of my workforce experience. It's not changing the experience, I'm just bringing my experience. That one I know will be more heavily workforce related, more so than any of the other ones. So what it does, and this is the best part, you can save up to 10 of them. So you can go in today and start to put in, whatever job you have now and just kind of start to put it in there and then maybe save a different copy of that. So it highlights a different part, maybe more of your leadership roles or maybe team lead roles. But the reason why I do this is because that way I don't have to go back and redo all this work later on. It does save me a lot more time to kind of focus on some of the other things that maybe asked within a job. So it saves me dividends. So if I'm feeling super energetic, I go in, do this, get it done, knocked out. And so then that way, when I'm feeling not so energetic, I already have an application ready to go. It's laziness on my part. So uploading documents, this is one of the nice things. Once again, this is my actual account. You can see I say these are my college transcripts. I don't actually know where my actual paper college transcripts are, and right now in my house. So to have them here, and you can see I did it in 2017. This is how long they've been in there. And so that way I know if I have a job that asks for my college transcripts, I can attach these and I don't have to go and look for it. So you can do this with if you have your high school college transcripts, you can do this with your degrees. You can put it in here and be done with it. And then that way, if you're like me, you don't have to think about it again and just move on. So some of the state lingo, this is the part that I absolutely loathe, is we use a lot of lingo. And if you're not in the know, then it's really frustrating because that shouldn't be your stopping point. So when we say job bulletin, we're referring to actual job ads. So everything with the orange arrows that you see are job ads. We're going to go into the name. The highlighted things on here, these are your actual job titles. So these are your classifications. I like to think of these, if you were going to be a doctor, you have a very broad name as a doctor, but that doesn't necessarily encapsulate what you're actually doing. So that's something where when you go and you take your exam, you're going to go off of the top thing. It's going to be the actual classification title, not the working title. Some people do a working title in there. Like our district sales rep, that is what it is. They're not going to go and change it and make it better. Our information technology specialist, that is a very broad category. So that you could be doing anything in IT. So obviously here they put security engineer. That kind of gets a little bit more specific, like personnel specialist. I can tell you right now, as a layperson, I wouldn't know what that meant. Some of our job titles don't align with kind of what you see in private sector. That's basically a payroll person is what that job actually is. So let's say that you want to go in, you would either click on the blue classification and or view job posting. We say job bulletin. This says job posting. Now you know why everyone gets so confused when we talk about how to apply to the state. I like to call this the anatomy of a job. So when you go in there, everything up at the top, it'll always be the same. You always have the title. This might be a working job title or it might not. They might just copy and paste the thing, but this one shows you that this is a scratchers analyst. But the actual classification, and this is the job that you want to search for if you're going to take the exam, is associate accounting analyst. What this means is this is the skill set that they need at this level. So it's a negotiated pay. It just encapsulates a little bit more information. Our salaries will always be on there. They're never a secret. It is. There's negotiation power. That is far outside my pay grade because there's a lot of people who are involved in those decisions. It's not like a traditional recruiter who can do those negotiations for you. That's just unfortunately not how it works in the state. And lastly, the final filing date will always be on there as well. If you see it on CalCareers, it's active. If you don't, then it's no longer there. It's literally just that simple. There's no need to ever ask like, oh, is it still open? If you can apply for it, it's still open. The date, once that date passes, it's gone. You've missed the deadline. Once again, going back to that fair and consistent hiring, that's the reason why, because they can't open it back up for you because you forgot to submit your application because it becomes unfair for other people. So with these weird jobs that we have, how do you know what you'll actually be doing? My role is an associate governmental program analyst. Besides the really, really, really long job title, that doesn't actually tell you absolutely anything of what you need to know about what you'll actually be doing as a day-to-day job. The duty statement, this is going to be what you want to look at whenever you're looking at kind of what the job is. I'm going to use this as another tool later on for your actually application process. But this is what you're going to go in and you're going to sign when you start work. So this is basically your contract between what you're going to do and how it's going to work. So it shows you a breakdown of your percentages, how much percentage-ish, give or take, on what you're going to do. I came from private sector, so on the bottom was always other duties as assigned, which I felt like I spent probably 90% of what I did in that category. But I'd say that this is a pretty good snapshot of what to expect as an employee for you to be doing that job. So actually I'll go back first. Minimum qualifications. I know that they probably spoke about this, but what does it mean? It's just at a bare minimum, what do you need to know for knowledge, skills, and ability to be able to do the job? So going back to a nurse example, that one's a pretty easy one. So at a minimum, you have to have a nursing license. That would be minimum, bare minimum, that means that you pass your NCLEX, you're ready to go, but there's no other experience required. That would be at a minimum. Obviously, there's things that they would want more, but they can't require more than is in the minimum qualifications. I go back to my example of, my dream boyfriend. Probably at a minimum, I would prefer that he wasn't married. That would probably be at a minimum. So that's kind of a way to think about it, is what do you want at a minimum? Obviously, there's other things we want, but that can't be the ultimate deciding factor in it. So that's just kind of a way to think about your minimum qualifications. So this is my fabulous tip. When you do your state application, you still want to address your minimum qualifications. So let's say at a minimum, they want you to have, we'll say 2 years of clerical experience, but let's say that you had 15 years nursing experience. And you go in and you start talking about all your nursing experience, but you miss speaking and referring to the actual clerical part of what you did. You no longer meet the minimum qualifications. You want to make sure that you're being very detailed. So you're showing, like for here, January 2022 to January, I didn't put 2024, but for the sake of this example, we're going to put that. But it shows that I worked in a clerical position. Here's what I did. So that way I make sure I'm showing I meet the minimum, and then I'm going to blow you away with all my extra stuff that I did as well. So it's making sure that you're pointing out that you do meet the minimum qualifications, because if you don't do that, then you don't meet it. Once again, it just is, it is what it is. I don't make the rules. I just play by them. So that's what I'm trying to show everyone here today, is how to do that efficiently. So what does it mean? Like, I'm going to give you a real example. So if you were to apply for an office technician job, office technician is an entry-level position. It's a clerical position. I know a lot of people that have come into that position, even though they were way overqualified, because it's a good foot in the door. And also they're kind of the cornerstone of it. They meet more people than I ever will, because they work with so many people, and they're kind of everyone uses them. So if you're an office technician, the way to read it is it's an or, which is nice. So you can either have 2 years of clerical experience, meaning outside of the state, or 1 year of experience in the California State Service, performing clerical duties at a level of responsibility equivalent to that of an office assistant. So the office assistant is first, and then the office technician is next. We weigh state time like dog years. So your state time is weighed more heavily than your external experience. And that just, once again, it is what it is. But that's sometimes when you see that, and you will see it a lot, like, oh, if you've been in this job for 1 year in the state, it's great. Outside might be 4 years. And I don't know why. These are all negotiated things within this job. And I just abide by the rules. So now that you have kind of your minimum qualifications, it's kind of where do you find them? There's two places, at least that I know of. You can go to the job bulletin, once again, the actual job posting in normal people terms, and then or the exam bulletin. So on every job, you'll see that every job bulletin, you'll see on there, there's a minimum qualifications. This exists every single place you go. You don't have to look for it. It will be on the job posting. Now, if you're on the exam, and I'm going to show you how to get there, it might look like one of the two examples that you see here. It's a hyperlink. It'll take you there. It's just another place for you to find it, just in case. Like I said, I know that there's a different way to go about doing it through CalHR. I'm not gonna, your eyes might glaze over even more if I do that, but there's a third way to go about getting it if you did need it. An exam or assessment, I get a lot of people who are nervous whenever I say this because they think back to school. It's not. Most of the time, it's just a assessment of your skill set based on you, based off of what you think about yourself. So if you were to go, sorry, I skipped on my screen. This is on Cal Careers. On the right, it'll be exam/assessment search. You would type in the name, the classification name, not the working title name, because it won't come up. And then it'll take you to the exam. So once you're there, this is just an evaluation of your education, experience, abilities, knowledge through the assessment. So this right here can take on many forms depending on the job. So it could be an exam or assessment. And everything has an expiration date. The exam is only good for so long. So when you see it, it will pop up with how long the actual exam is good for. I came into the state as a limited term employee, and my limited term was up. They moved the position to a permanent position. I had to retake the test to be able to be eligible to apply for the same position I was in. So thankfully I passed it, because that would have really not been fun if I hadn't have. Obviously, I heard the gentleman talking about the 3-rank system. So you have rank 1, rank 2, and rank 3. Obviously, the last being unsuccessful. If you get that, that means that you didn't pass. There is a way to appeal it. And that goes once again through the state personnel board. If that was the case, you can retake it. It'll tell you how long it is. Usually it's between 6 and 12 months, back when you can do it. And it does take 24 hours to post to your account. So that's one of the things that I know a lot of people get confused about, is they don't know how the actual exam posts, or it might not show up right away, but it will. And you don't need to attach it unless you're told by the employer that you need to attach your test score. It's not relevant. So the exam bulletin will, once again, all of this information is standard on there. So you'll always see the filing date. Some are in person, and that's the reason why that's on there. If it says continuous, that means you can take it in the middle of the night in your pajamas if you felt like it. Other ones you would have to register for to do in person, because it's a proctored exam. Once again, the minimum qualifications are on there. The classification descriptions, which means in layman's terms, minimum qualifications. And then, of course, my favorite thing ever is you can actually see kind of a preview of what to expect on the exam. So you know maybe how quiet your house needs to be, or whether or not you're going to need a pen and pencil to do calculations. It just kind of gives you a little bit better picture of kind of what to expect, and or maybe kind of where to take the test if you need it to be more quiet, or if it's just, or maybe pull out transcripts. I know there's some that I've taken for the research analyst where I had to actually have my college transcripts because I didn't remember how many semester units or hours I've taken for certain classes. Just things like that were just a little bit more helpful to have around. On every single job as well, you'll always have a human resources contact. What that means is this is the person that replaced that you can call. Sometimes it'll be a person's name. It's either the hiring manager or somebody from HR. But that way you can call if you have questions. If you have questions about application status, if you have questions about maybe you're unsure you can always start there. And if they can't answer it because of it kind of goes outside the scope of what would be fair to all candidates, then they'll let you know. But that is definitely on there. It's buried. Our job bulletins are longer than a CVS receipt, so you kind of have to look for it, but it's definitely on there if you have questions. By all means, I highly recommend people use it. It will tell you the position location, which is important, just so that way you kind of know what area that you're referring to, or if for downtown Sacramento parking, to see if kind of that's something that interests you as well. So once you kind of go through all of that stuff, you're ready to apply. As soon as you hit apply now, and considering you're logged in, so you're already logged in, you've done all your business, you're going to come up and the screen's going to pop up and it's going to say, can I apply for this job? Now, most people, once again, going back to myself, this is not normal stuff that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So what does that mean? It means if you've passed the exam, you can select, I have list eligibility. Or I have eligibility. What this means too is, this is in state terms, we call it list eligibility. This means, did you pass the exam and are you within those rankings that are actually what they call reachable? If that's the case, you click your middle button and or the top button and you move on the road. If you want to obtain list eligibility, that means you need to take the exam, then you want to select that button. So just it's one of those weird, quirky state things. If you don't remember, which is fine, because you're in the middle of applying, you would go to your CalCareers account, and then you would go down to assessment records. And if you have active eligibility, you're going to find it there. So if it's active, if it's within that thing, then you're good. You don't need to do anything else. If you don't, or if you just took it within the past 24 hours and you know that you've gotten your yay, you passed, just give it 24 hours, it will show up there. And if not, then I believe at the bottom of the state state exam that there should be a number that you can contact or email that you can do that with. But it does take a little bit for it to show up in this space on your CalCareers account. On every state application, you're going to see this screen in particular. You have your minimum requirements and your additional documents. That's where you also find your duty statement. Job application checklist. This is great because this basically tells you everything you need to include. Here on the bottom, so it shows everything that I need to include with this particular job. So that way you don't forget or miss something. And if you miss a document that's required, you're ineligible, which really stinks, especially if you spend so much time doing all of this. And then to have that happen is really quite upsetting, actually. So when we talk about documents, the state application will always be required. That is always going to be your standard. And that's once again why I go back to the fact, if you spend your time on that, then you've done majority of the work, because that will always be required no matter what job you apply for. The supplemental documents, these are things that could be asked for. You have your resume, cover letter, statement of qualifications. These could supplemental things as far as certificates, degrees, transcripts, driver's license. Those are all additional things that you'll see. And I'm going to show you kind of some of those examples of what they look like. So when you'll see that every job bulletin has this on here, it just depends on what they listed. So right here, you can see that the application, they want, obviously you always see a current version of your state examination, or the employment application form, which is saved within your account. Your resume is optional and not required. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Degree or diploma, depending on how high you've gone. And statement of qualifications. Both those two statement of qualifications I'm going to touch on. So the resume is optional, but can be included. So when you see documents on here and they're not required, every applicant has to be given the same opportunity to submit the same documents. This goes back to that fair and consistent hiring practices. You should see I should count how many times I say that. But what that does is it allows you, if you want to submit your resume, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. It's not going to count against you. The reason why I like this, because this goes back to that scoring criteria. I can say a lot more stuff in my resume than I can on my state application. As long as one of these documents has everything I need to put into it, then I'm going to get the maximum points that I can. So I can elaborate more in my resume than I can on my state document or the state application, because there is a character cap on it. So it allows me to be able to be a little bit more long-winded about things to make sure that I'm encapsulating every single thing that I absolutely want to say to maximize the amount of points. And I'm going to show you kind of what that looks like too. Because that's part of the state application. I don't want to call it a game because it's not, but it's just one of the hang up points. If you don't know, then you're going to miss it. That's the reason why every time I see resume is optional, I'm like, yes, absolutely. I'm going to include that because you just gave me another document that I can put even more information on. I try to, when I apply for anything, and I've been very successful now that I've learned kind of how it works, is obviously remember you are not going to be in front of them, but you want them to see how awesome you are. So you want to make sure to be as clear as possible when you're doing it. This is another example of a statement or the application package. This one shows that you state at, they want the, good Lord, says, state application, like I said, will always be standard. So that's where I spend majority of my time because I know I'm going to use it. Your resume is required, school transcripts, and statement of qualifications. A lot of people hate the statement of qualifications. I know that wasn't particularly a fan, because it really is a lot of work. But once I got one or two good examples, from my work experience, I could pretty much adapt them to any question that they ask me. It's kind of like, when you meet that person who can find a way to talk about themselves all the time, no matter what you ask, they'll find a way to bring the conversation back around to them. If you're really good, your statement of qualifications, you can kind of start to adapt to anything that you need back to what you need it to, your best, most highlighted example of something awesome that you've done, or an interaction that maybe was awful, but you turned it around. This is your chance to do that. So I will go into that on a little bit more detail as well. How to submit your state application. You can do it online via CalCareers, which is great, but you can drop it off at the address. You will always see them on the state application. It'll tell you where to drop them off, or you can do it in the mail as well, as long as it's postmarked before the date on here. So, well, this one obviously it's already gone, but as long as it's postmarked on 7/28/2013, it's still considered eligible. If it takes a week to get there you go. But you can still mail it in. Up at the top of every job app, like as soon as you open up your job bulletin, it'll be there. It'll tell you how it accepts it. A while ago, when I first started, there were very few that actually were electronic. You had to drop them off or mail them in. So at least now we're kind of getting on with the times to be able to make things a little bit easier for those around us. So knowledge, skills, and abilities. So knowledge is, what do you know? Your skills is, what is your experience and how have you applied the knowledge? And then your abilities are those innate qualities that you specifically bring to the table that makes you different, because we both know that two people can do the same thing, but it's that certain thing about that one person that maybe makes them a little bit better. You see this with doctors. Sometimes they go through the same schooling, but some have better bedside manner. It's that innate quality about them that just is that ability to be able to do it. So what does that actually look like? So with the knowledge, so let's say you learned about marketing in school, you have your degree, you've done it, you have your skill, you've created through your experience many like successful marketing campaigns. Okay, you're totally amazing. Now let's say we have two candidates, but what makes you different? You're a big risk taker, but you have this great ability to get buy-ins from executives, and you can show that in your resume or statement of qualifications. You can show kind of what makes you different than other people. So not only have I built successful marketing campaigns, but I'm really good at being able to get buy-in from executive level staff. And here's how I've done it in the past. So it's that what makes you you, what makes you special. So that's the ability. How are you able to do this? Which is important because truthfully, we hire people. That really does make the difference. And we've all worked for really, really, really horrible bosses at some point. And so that ability is really important because anybody can do a job. It's that extra little piece that really makes or breaks anything, actually, an experience or working for somebody or with somebody. So on your application package, I already talked about your resume being optional. I'm going to go into the statement of qualifications. We have this fun little game that we like to play is what do we want? Formatting. Some are kind of open. They'll be like, tell us why you're the best candidate. And there's no other thing on there as far as how you want it. But this one is one that we currently have as a job listed. So it should be typed, single spaced, no more than 3 pages length, and using 12-point font. Sometimes they'll designate the font size they want. They'll designate your margins. I mean, they'll get as specific as possible because what they want to do too, in addition to seeing your experiences, can you follow directions? In this one, questions in numerical order. If they don't say what they want, I do a header with my name and then the page number, just that way, just in case I get lost. I don't know. And then I go through, I state the question, answer the question, state the question, answer the question. If they don't want that or something very specific, I go through and I'm old school. I will print this out and I highlight it because I need to see it and to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. So formatting may or may not be in there, but definitely check for that. I've watched, executive level staff submit resumes or the statement of qualifications and not do it correctly. And guess what happens? They automatically get disqualified, which really stinks because statement of qualifications do take a little bit of time. To think that you could get it thrown out for something so trivial is really upsetting. So pay attention to what it is that they're asking for. If you have questions, once again, go to that HR contact and find them and ask if you have a question about what the formatting should be, or if it's not clear, or you just want clarification before you do it. It'll save you a lot of headache later on. So this is something I do for myself. When you open up your job bulletin, you'll always see there's a job description and duties, and there's desirable qualification. The job description and duties could be long, short, just depends. What that does is that kind of tells me generally what they're looking for. The desirable qualifications, once again, I go back to my dating thing. This is like, in my perfect world, who would I build? Like, how wonderful would they be? These are the ideal, like your ideal candidate. Just because you don't check all of those boxes does not mean that you should not apply. If you have 1 or 2, or you've done a job similar, now you really got to figure out how to tweak it and wiggle it so you make yourself absolutely the best candidate for the job. And then obviously right here, what you're looking at now is the duty statement, that one that I showed you, that what you'll actually be doing. I go back to the fact that I'm old school. I print them all out and I start highlighting. And you might be thinking, what are you highlighting? Well, I can tell you right now, 2 things stand out to me in this job. I can see obviously 30% of this job, they want analytical skills. I can see it twice now that they put it in there. They want excellent analytical skills. So guess what? Probably the title of my job thing will be analytical, AGPA analytical. That is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to go in there and I'm going to highlight that I am hands down the most analytical person you've ever met in your life. And that's what I'm going to really, really focus on. I go through and I start highlighting verbs. What do they want me to do in this job? And what experience have I had personally that I can sell here? So that's the reason why I always think, like, reflect back to some great experience that you've had. I always think that sometimes some of the worst, I used to work in insurance, so some of the most upset, angry people in the world were actually probably some of my best experiences on any application that I have, because I learned a lot from those conversations. I learned a lot from those people. So I make sure to bring it up. In fact, I brought up think it was for this job actually that I have now, is a situation I had back in 2006 with a person stuck in Kanab, Utah. And I brought that up because I remember how, obviously it stuck with me because I remember how awful it was. And so it was how do I leverage that situation? And I was an operator, so I was a temp operator. I was about the lowest on the totem pole I think it got. But that experience taught me so much on a lot of levels. So I utilize that in different ways. I'm able to put that situation into so many of my different interview questions. Also in my statement of qualifications, I could pretty much finagle somehow in that situation in, depending on what they're asking for. So that's what I do personally. I found that to be very successful for myself, because then that way I'm really speaking to what they're looking for, not what I think they're looking for. Like I said, all the questions are already written out, all the interview questions, what they're looking for, everything's already set in stone, what they're looking for. Now it's your job to adapt your experience to show them like, hey, you found me, I'm your person, please hire me. So that's what I've done. I found it to be very effective in my own personal job search in the state. So in summary, after everything you learned today, always be clear. Be clear, be clear, be clear. They cannot infer your experience. So if they're asking for 2 years of receptionist duties, and you say that you sat at a front desk and did clerical work, it's not that they can't take that leap for you. You have to spell it out very, very, very clearly for them, what it is you did. And once again, that's the reason why I pull out all that stuff, because obviously if you say it, it's important. So I make sure to say it back to you. So I'm illustrating for you my experience and how it equates to what it is you're looking for. So that's one of the things. Making sure, obviously, for grammar and spelling, I am horrific at grammar. It's not my strong suit. So I have to make sure that I read it back to myself, because I have a habit of skipping over things or not drawing things together. In my head, it all makes sense, but I have to make sure when I read it, like I'm saying what I really want to say. That's just a good to do. Accuracy, making sure that you're applying, when I say accuracy, making sure that you're applying for the job that you're actually qualified for. I've heard, and I don't get applications, but I've heard from our folks who do, that they'll get a lot of applications because people are just hitting apply and not necessarily reading what it is. That's one of the things, just making sure that you're tailoring your state application to the job. And that way also too, you don't want to waste your time either. Your time's more valuable. It's a commodity you don't get back. So making sure that you're taking your time to get it right, because then that way it also lessens the amount of jobs you have to apply for. And obviously, if you've heard, don't wait. So if you see a job that you're like, oh, I really like that, apply for it. If you're eligible, apply for it. The state doesn't owe you anything. So by waiting or putting one, oh, I applied for one job, I don't want to apply for multiple. If you see something that interests you, apply for it, because it's not like private sector where it's frowned upon if you apply for, oh, they applied for 3 jobs, which is still weird to me because it seems like it would be a good thing if you want to work somewhere. But applying for stuff that you're interested in, and whoever gets back to you first, and if that's the job you're interested in, then they're the winner of you, so it's definitely something that I recommend. Just keeping your feelers out there, kind of make that your homework, is applying for jobs, plus the practice will definitely help. You'll notice that it gets easier, especially once you write your state application and statement of qualifications a few times. It really does actually get easier. So it is actually wonderful practice. And that actually brings me to my final slide. Obviously, I'm sure I probably created more questions in people's minds than not, but if you have any questions, let me know.
That was really great. Thank you so much. So much information. As you can now tell, why we do 2.5 hours of state hiring.
Crazy. I
We
know.
it's a lot, but it's worth it in the end. I as a CalPERS employee myself, the retirement benefits are huge and helpful. So take that into consideration when you're looking at salaries as well. So just be mindful of that. But we do have some questions for you. I'll start with the
Oh,
ones I jotted down. I tried to answer as many in the chat. If I answered your question in the chat and I don't cover it now, retype it at the bottom to get a more thorough answer. Okay, for the first one, does the California Lottery offer or partner with other organizations for apprenticeships, particularly in the IT field?
we don't so we do have IT internships, but you already have to be, it's an internal lottery thing. They actually just did one. They did one for finance and they did one for IT. But it was internal, and I think that has to do with maybe the CalPERS like retirement portion of it. So you had a job to go back to. So for them, they held their job and they were able to, there's one in an IT apprenticeship right now, which is kind of cool. So that way, when it does become open, they're eligible to apply, which is kind of a neat. I like a good safety net.
Yeah, and I will say that's one thing with state hiring. Once you get in, there's more opportunity because you're a
Mhm.
state employee. So, first step, get in
Yeah.
and go from there. Okay, next question was, are printed transcripts acceptable for the application? And then I added in the chat, official transcripts would have to
Oh,
follow once the hiring process, but maybe you can speak to that better
yeah.
than I can.
It depends on the job. So I had one that actually required my transcripts, but it was the copy that was in there. So I didn't want to, but I unsealed the envelope, how it has those, and I hurt my feelings, but I scanned them in, and it's that I haven't been asked for them before and I haven't had it verified. So I don't know. I don't know,
It could
actually.
be dependent on each department, which actually tomorrow, if there's a particular department that you want to talk with about that, I would take your question to them. Same with the apprentice question. There might be some opportunities there for chatting tomorrow. But yeah, I think for me, I was able to submit my transcripts, but then they had to follow up with an official transcript from the school. But they did all of that. I didn't have to do that. So perhaps that's the thing we just don't hear
Yeah.
as much. But again, we're in a special district, so it could be different. And then we had a question, what does someone need as far as training or education for the analytical positions? And I had answered in the chat, anyone that has a bachelor's degree, whether it's Bachelor of Arts or Science, they qualify for those AGPA positions. And then of course the experience is, any clerical or office position will have an analytical component to it.
Mhm.
So it's really just getting your start and being willing to start with a category one or an entry level position.
Yeah, one of my old coworkers actually, I think she has a GED, and she started as an office technician, then to a staff service analyst, then to an AGPA. Some people, it just depends on, their experience and what they're able to do. I always claim that people with, 20 years of experience kind of trumped my bachelor's degree because, me out of college, I didn't have work experience, not in that sense. So, it comes down to, like I said, to how you sell yourself in your state application. We have a marketing classification. That's the only one I've seen personally that requires a bachelor's degree. Like as it doesn't matter, you could have a million years of experience, and if you don't have a marketing degree, it is what it is, and kind of.
Yeah, and I would say definitely look for those ors. I know there's several, classifications that do offer that or button. There was a question in the chat just now, with 10 years of analytical experience, but not a bachelor's degree. Look for those positions with that or option, because in some cases, some state agencies are one for one. Some are, like Jed spoke earlier, I think it's 50% of it. So it
Dog
would
years.
count as 5 years analytical experience, things like that. So what, sorry.
I said dog years. That's the best way I can explain it. And I just work here, so I don't know. why, but yeah, for the analyst role, like I said, just making sure that you sell yourself on that experience, because your experience is invaluable, obviously. I have a bachelor's degree, but my bachelor's degree back when I got it was, I mean, it was a piece of paper. Now it definitely has a lot more oomph because of my experience.
Same, I would agree with mine.
I thought I had a lot of experience until I realized I didn't.
Well, and it depends, like I reinvented myself 3 years ago and finally used my bachelor's degree. So, but I had all this wealth of experience. So really, it's dependent on how I will back this up 100%, how you put yourself forward in that statement of qualifications and that state application that are going to be of the utmost importance. I really appreciated what you said about including the resume and why you would do that when it's optional. I think that's the first time I've heard that in a state presentation, and it makes so much
I'm,
sense.
yeah, I'm very like, how can I give more information? Because the state application, you only have so many characters you can put in, but their resume, I can hit a lot more of my points in that bad boy.
Exactly. I mean, especially when you've had a vast employment history,
Yes,
like a
yes,
person that was formerly in nonprofits and started a new job every 6 to 11 months.
exactly. No, exactly. That's exactly it. Or, if you have 20 years experience, I'm like, I can't fit that in. I just can't. I can try, but I will miss something important.
And there was another question that came in when a position asks for a particular degree, they give the examples marketing, accounting, finance. Would a business degree also qualify?
I know with accounting, they want, we'll say 20 semester units, and I'm making it up, but I know with the accounting one, they'll want something where it was like you had X amount of accounting classes. That would be something you can use. So this gets kind of tricky. So if you see in the desirable qualifications that they're like, we really want you to have a communications degree, but you go to the minimum qualifications and it doesn't say it in there, then it's not required. It's just on their wish list items. So you could say, you know what, I have a business degree, you decide whether or not it's important, but I'm going to put it out there and let you know that I have it, so you have to make sure to kind of see where it is, the minimum qualifications and the non-negotiables, the desirables, like I said, is that wish list of my like ideal person, who would it be and what would they look like? And, just put it out there.